Hi, everybody. This is For Your Info Podcast, a production of Solutions by Cat. I'm Eric Ramsey here with Kat Gwynn of Solutions by Cat. Our guest today is Christina Hartman, who is running for the congressional seat for the 16th District, which covers Lancaster, Berks, and Chester County. We're so glad to have you today. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Maybe you could start us out for a few minutes just telling us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, that'd be great. Thanks again for the opportunity to be here. My name's Christina Hartman. I grew up here in Lancaster County. I was raised in Manheim Township and went to Manheim Township Public Schools, so that's where I got my start. After that, I went to the George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and to Fordham University for my 2 degrees, which are in international affairs with a heavy emphasis in economics. So I got to, study some great things in college, which was fun. But then I took those degrees and went on to a few jobs that focused on supporting people in other countries around the world to advocate for their own freedoms. And I did that through voter education, civic education, and human rights work, and also elections. So that's an area that everyone's not always familiar with, but it's a very interesting way of translating what I learned here in Lancaster growing up. So as you know, in Lancaster, we have a thriving community of people who support nonprofits, support the third sector. Volunteering is really strong. So I took what I learned as a part of our culture here and took that around the world and helped folks around the world. But after about 12 years doing that work, I really felt like, I should contribute back home. And so I decided to take a job as director of development for a charity in New York City that supports survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse. And that was just shortly after the Sandusky scandal. And so I felt one of the ways that I could contribute to making our Pennsylvania a better place was to take a job in that field. So, and then I worked as an independent consultant for about 1.5 years, supporting nonprofits and helping them to do strategic planning and fundraising to make sure that they could advance their missions and support the community that we live in.
What happened? Did you just wake up one morning and go, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go for Congress. How did that happen?
Well, again, I think I was thinking long and hard about how I could contribute my skills best to the United States of America. And we've seen a lot of problems in Washington for quite a number of years, or just what I would say is a stalemate. So both sides sort of being at polar opposites, not being able to compromise, not being able to come to the middle. And like many people around the country and in this district, I felt very frustrated by that. And so I put on my thinking cap and thought, how can I contribute my skills best? And because I worked for policy advocacy organizations my whole life, for 16 years, I was on the other side of the table from someone like Joe Pitts, who is the current incumbent. And I was advocating from the outside, and that's really important and really an important role. But what I realized was that unless I could be on the inside, because of the loggerheads and because of the stalemate, I wasn't going to be able to make a difference. So I decided to run for Congress to help, put my skills to good use to make our democracy a better place and to make sure that folks in this district have a voice and that their voice is heard.
We appreciate that. What are some of the topics and issues that you're passionate about?
Sure. I'm passionate about many things. Passion is probably one of my top qualities, and so there's many things that get me excited. I would say because of my background, foreign policy is at the top of my list, particularly what's going on right now with Syria and ISIL. I've worked in many parts of the world where it's been difficult to work. I've worked in many dictatorships, so I'm very familiar with those issues and, again, want to do what we need to do as the United States of America to make the world a safer place and to make sure that these threats to ensure our own security for our own nation, but also for others. So foreign policy gets me really excited. I'm also passionate about education. As I said, I grew up here. I went to Manheim Township schools, and those schools were the foundation of my life, and I just recognize how important education is to all of us in being the best people that we can be, however that is, whatever that is, that we can be the best that we can be with education. And my public school education was top notch. I'd put it up against anyone else's in the world any day of the week, and would really just want to make sure that at a federal level we're doing what we can to ensure the same for students around this district, but also around the nation. And then, a couple other topics I would say, infrastructure is really important. We know that, Capitol Hill hasn't always been good about making sure that we have the money we need to ensure the safety of our roads and bridges. We know that public transport hasn't always been at the top of the agenda, but we do know that here in Lancaster in particular, the Amtrak station is really important to the economic prosperity of the area. We know that it's important to businesses, both to get in customers, and deliveries, via road or via rail, but then also, to make sure that if folks are commuting into the area and we're drawing talent from around the region, that we're able to do that through our public transportation. And that leads me to my last point of this area does attract talent from around the region, so around the state, around the Mid-Atlantic region, and that's thanks to our small and medium-sized businesses. And so a major focus of mine will be small and medium-sized businesses and how we can continue to support particularly small businesses that have made this area such a great success. All four of my grandparents were small business owners, and so it's something that's near and dear to my heart, and it's helped my family to grow, and I know that it's the backbone of our nation, and it's really the backbone of the economy here. So,
great. There seems to be kind of a message, the larger message in politics, where America was great at one time, and somehow we're not great now, but we're trying to get great again. We're off the rails, that kind of thing. What does that look like? What does being on the rails mean?
Sure.
On track mean?
Well, again, I think it goes back to supporting people, supporting folks in this country to be the best that they can be. I don't know if I would put it the same way that we're off the rails or off the tracks. I understand what people are talking about when they say that, but I think that it's about supporting education, supporting small business, supporting the things that make us or that enable us to be the best citizens, constituents, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters that we can be, and that's what forms community, and that community is actually what helps us to grow as a nation. And I think that's actually one of the things, if I said that something was off the rails, so to speak, I really think that in a lot of ways we've lost a sense of community in this country. And I think, again, one of the things that people in this district, in Lancaster, Berks, and Chester counties, but particularly Lancaster County, are so good at is community. And we are an example for the nation, and we can continue to be. But community takes work. Yes. And we need to keep working at it, and that's a holistic approach that involves everyday people and finding the time, because we all know it's a modern society and we all lack time. There's never enough hours in the day. And again, private sector and government and all the roles that play into community.
Here's another good question.
Sure. Star
Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Okay, then we can continue then. Okay.
Categorically. That's an easy one.
Where do you think that our Congress gets stuck?
Wow, I think Congress is getting stuck because of the polarization of politics. So I think what we've seen, particularly over the past 10 years, although it's been brewing for probably 30 years, this polarization of both sides of the aisle and folks just moving further and further to the extremes in order to attract what they consider their base of people. And that leaves folks in the middle quite frustrated, and we know that most people actually lie in the middle. So I think that Congress in that way is probably it's not always representative of America in a lot of ways, but in that way, perhaps it is representative of America, that there's, some folks out here on the fringes, but that the folks in the middle are really getting lost. And in their frustration, I think that they're choosing to not participate because they're so fed up in the process. But just to go back to your question, I think that we need more compromise. We need more people willing to sit at the table and to negotiate and really try to come to solutions that everyone can agree to. So that's not to say that you will always get your way in its entirety. It's to say that we will sit down and have a civil discourse about the topic at hand and find ways that we can move our country forward in a way that's agreeable to the majority of people and start delivering for the American people. Because what we've seen, particularly over the past 10 years, is we're frozen. We're frozen in time and nothing's moving forward, and that means we're not delivering for the American people, and that's not fair.
I agree completely. What's going on with the Republican side?
So in this race on the Republican side, you have 6, I believe, declared candidates who have come out, and they'll, of course, we all go through a primary process, so there'll be 6 candidates on the Republican side duking it out in the primary. I think it's sort of reminiscent of a presidential race on some level, like a lot of candidates, a lot of people vying for that seat, and so it'll be really interesting to watch what happens. So this district is considered traditionally a conservative area, safe Republican, but what we know is that this area was gerrymandered in 2012 in a way that actually increased the Democratic votes. We now have Reading City, we have Coatesville, we have a number of areas. We also know that, again, because of our small and medium-sized business community, that folks have been moving in from around the area. Those transplants tend to be Democrats, and so, and then again, a lot of folks in the middle, very moderate folks, and I would say that that's the theme of Lancaster. That's the Lancaster that I grew up in, just moderate folks trying to do the right thing in the right way. It's not extremists on either side. It's just folks in the middle who are raising families and trying to buy a home and trying to make sure that their kids get a good education, as we talked about, and make sure they're employed and have a job. So we want to deliver for those people. So that's what we're here to do.
That sounds great. I know. I have to confess that I have not been in the know very much with the political world, because there's lots of things that have been frustrating or that I just know will consume me because I have such an interest. But talking with you sparks my interest more, and it does make me want to get more involved, pay attention more. And I've always realized how important it was to vote, but it definitely has more of an impact on me. And now my son's turning 18 soon and everything, so I have more of a concern of how many people aren't voting, because they might be viewing things like I have. So maybe not to put you on the spot, but something to think about. How can we help the me's of the world get to a better place?
Well, I think, there's a number of things we can do. I think, first of all, it's putting forth candidates that look more like the electorate. Right? I think that people are frustrated by politics generally, so I can't necessarily make that go away until I'm in office, right? Because one of the ways that you get less frustrated with politics is if people start to deliver, right? So in order to get in, it's like to the place where we can start to come to the table to negotiate. It's hard to deliver as a candidate at this stage, but when you're on the inside delivering, so that'll bring people in. But in this stage of the process, as a candidate running in this next election, it's really about meeting with folks one-on-one, trying to raise awareness around these issues that are again, concerning to not just you, but to so many people, and doing that through different mediums. So, of course, we have this podcast today that helps us to do that, to raise awareness. We'll do that through social media. We'll do it with television. We'll do it in a number of ways to try to engage folks. And then, again, I'm hopeful that the more that we have candidates who start to look like the populace, so, again, I'm pushing 40 years old, I sort of have a certain background from the area, and I'm a woman. There's certain things about the characteristics that I have that are different from the characteristics of the usual suspects that are normally put up for elections. And so I think that will also help.
I agree completely, because you're very approachable.
Well, thank you.
It's been very nice to meet you, and a definite different feel than some of the other politicians that I've run into over the past. Perfectly nice and fine, but you definitely have an approachability.
Well, thank you. And I would just on that point, I think the other piece is what I would call normalcy. So we need candidates to look like the electorate, but we also need candidates who are just normal people. So regular people. So I'm probably the most regular person you can find in a lot of ways. And that means that I understand the issues of many people. So for example, I, like many people, had student loans. I lived through that. I understand it. My healthcare is a big issue for me and my husband. My husband's a survivor of cancer, so we pay special attention to those things. At the same time, I work in the nonprofit sector. My husband works in the for-profit sector, so we're really sensitive to the things that affect those sectors. Again, we're living a normal life. We're interacting with regular folks who have regular problems, and that helps us to understand and to try to push forward policies that will again, improve, not just, it's not about improving my life, it's about listening to people in this district and really making sure we understand the issues and taking those to Washington and pushing forward for change.
This is exciting and interesting.
Yes.
What else? What else is there that you want to let our viewers and listeners know?
Well, I guess I would just say that what we're seeing today, and I think this is part of the frustration, is just that we're living in a changing world. Mm-hmm. The world has been changing for quite some time, and I don't think our policies at the state level or the federal level have been keeping up with the changes that we're seeing in our day-to-day lives. It's almost like we're, regular people are on the 2.0 version and government's stuck on the 1.0 version, right? A little bit. And so how can we think about new ways of approaching things? So not the same old recycled ideas that have been used, time and again. And those were valuable at the times when they were used and they worked at the time. But we're headed into a new era and a new time when we need to be thinking about, again, just different ways of approaching things or going back to things that we know work. So like community, we know community works. We know having strong communities work. So how do we go back to that in a way that addresses our modern challenges of us all being tethered to a smartphone and us, working one or two jobs and making sure that our kids are everywhere they're supposed to be on time. And, we're just competing with a lot of modern realities. And I think that it's so important to emphasize the fact that we really need not just new folks and new energy, and new faces, but also new ideas for the challenges that we face, including making sure that we're safe as a nation and that we're facing the threats that are encountering us abroad and at home, that we're facing them strongly, assertively, and in a way that protects us but benefits our world overall.
As a whole, right.
You mentioned the technology, and I remember being a kid and wanting to talk to a friend and dialing his house number, and if they're not home, I have to wait for a call. And now you can reach anybody around the world in a moment, and we're seeing everyone around the world in a moment. The world was a really huge place as a kid, and now it is so small. And so our friends, our allies, our enemies are right there. It adds it's a much different world. It adds a more complicated layer
and
to
it's only
actually
going to
making
get more
things happen.
complicated. It is. It's hard to imagine how much further we go, but it's there. So,
and again, I would just add that in my travels, I've managed to work and spend time with folks in those countries and really understand both what they're about, which is often the same as what we're about as Americans, right? So the average person, and those folks, they don't always like our government, but they are able to separate out the difference between me as a person and my government. So they, the famous words are, Christina, we don't like the U.S. government, but we like you as a person, or something like that. And I think that's true for a lot of Americans. Like, I'm sure many Americans would be like, we don't like the Iranian government, but we, I've met an Iranian, and so you as a person are great. And so, how do we, again, we need to make sure that as a government, as a U.S. government, we're doing the right things, and we're always going to do what's in our best interest. We have to, that's okay. We always have to do what's in our best interest, and, make sure that we're doing what's best for our country and our people, and we'll always do that. But we also need to understand that the world is a small place, And I think I have a great example of that, as you said that, just because it's a great Lancaster connection as well. The number of people that I've been in touch with, so I was in Kazakhstan in 2004, I was in South Sudan in 2011, and just by happenstance, managed to meet some folks from Lancaster while I was in those two places.
That's great.
And sat down next to a guy at Thanksgiving dinner. This was in 2011. I was in South Sudan. It was at the embassy, which was not chandeliers. It was, card tables and dirt floors. And I sat down next to the gentleman, and I sort of said, "Oh, is a seat taken? May I sit here?" And he goes, "Oh, sure, sit there." And I said, "Hi, I'm Christina Hartman." He goes, "Oh, I'm Ryan Musser." And I just looked at him. I was like,
Musser.
with a last name like Musser, I was like, "You can only be from one place." And I said, "Are you from Lancaster?" And he said, "I sure am." And he's like,
That's
"How
wild.
did you know that?" But I think that's, again, another
It's pretty neat.
testament. It's another testament to the people of this area that it's, that people from here get out, they go places, they get an education here, they get out, they do things, and they come back home and contribute to make our community better, but also want to contribute to the world and make the world a better place. And that's something consistent with so many people who live and grow up here. So I couldn't be prouder to be from here, and that legacy continues to live on, and I'm so glad to be a part of it. So
That's great. As people starting to get to know you and stuff, and after listening and watching, how can they find you? What's a good way to really start to get to know you?
Sure. So, of course, there's the obvious option. So, ChristinaMHartman.com is my website. You can find me on social media as well, both on Twitter and Facebook, and we'll be starting a YouTube channel relatively soon. So, those are sort of the less interactive ways, but the sort of technological ways to get in touch with me. And then I'm out and about in town quite frequently.
Yes, you are. In a good way. In a good way.
Yeah, so I make the rounds in Reading City. I was just in Sinking Spring this morning. I'm around Lancaster pretty regularly. I live in downtown Lancaster, and in Kennett Square, I visit that area, Coatesville, with some regularity as well. So as I'm out and about, if you see me, definitely say hello, and or feel free to
say hello.
Feel free to send me a message and invite me to something, because I'm always interested in learning more about different aspects of our community with which maybe I'm not as familiar, and so trying to hit as many events as I can to meet as many people as I can.
Yeah, it's been great.
Kat said it when you're mentioning you're out and about. Meeting you is an experience, and it's excited all of us.
It's a good experience. It's been a good
about the whole process.
Oh,
There's so many things I want to talk to you about.
So you have us really excited about getting involved and learning more. What can we do, or what should people do to get involved with the process?
Sure. I think, the main point is that we want people to be really excited about this election. As we covered,
I'm excited.
It's a really
I've never been excited.
It's a very exciting year, 2016. We've got so many candidates in this race. It's going to be a race to watch, really exciting, and we want to invite everyone in to participate in that. There's many ways that folks can do that. So, they can do that online through my website, ChristinaMHartman.com, on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We just launched a YouTube channel recently, and more importantly, engagement. So folks coming out to vote, folks paying in the primary, for example, which is on April 26th, as well as the general in November of next year. We want folks to get excited. We're hopefully going to, again, get some T-shirts and things like that, some paraphernalia, whatever you call it, to make sure that people, if they want to participate in that way, can have their voices heard and
Sport the Christina swag.
So, exactly. It's a little bit about swag.
Volunteer as well?
Volunteer, of course. And again, we want to bring as many people into the process as possible, because it's about it's about the election. It's about representing people well in Congress, but it's also about getting people excited about participating in an election and in their democracy in a way that they haven't in the past.
Right.
So I'm proof of that right now. I'm pretty excited.
There's people out there that are scratching their heads. What is Congress? What's the role of a person in Congress? What is it to be a congressperson?
Yeah, so the role of a congressperson is to represent the voices of the people of this district. So I think of it like a megaphone, right? Your role is to hear all the things that are happening in this district, around the district, determine what it is that the majority of people think and want, and then amplifying. I'm the megaphone, so I'm amplifying those voices on Capitol Hill, and I'm going around every day making sure that the other 434 members of Congress know what the people of this district, of Lancaster, Berks, and Chester counties want for their lives, and that I bring back results for them. And so I'm your representative, but not just in sort of a political wonky way. I'm your salesperson. I'm the person who makes sure that, again, that you're represented well, that your issues are represented, and that you, as a person, are being represented in the most effective way.
You're really going to go advocate for us.
I will.
So when I excuse me, when I catch you on the street and I'm having my issue with the education system, so to speak, and bending your ear, and there's some things that are making sense or clicking or whichever, and then maybe Eric finds you later on and has similar concerns, we can trust in that you're going to take all that information back and really represent it as true to us.
That's right. That's right. I mean, and I think, again, the other piece of that is making sure that I understand how many other people in our community feel the same way, right? So they may have similar issues. They may see the situation differently.
Right.
So what we want to do is we'll organize town hall meetings, we'll organize town hall phone calls, different things to get folks engaged that way, so that we hear all the voices, because there's many people in this district who are concerned about education issues, and they have particular perspectives that might not match yours, but that we hear from all voices, and then I know what to do. I know what message I'm taking back based on those conversations. Right. And then again, I'm taking that to Washington, and I'm being the megaphone for the people here.
And the classic phrase is, when someone's complaining on a job site or whatever, it's write your congressman, write your congressman. I mean, literally, it's that easy.
Right.
And especially now with technology, it's really easy to get engaged.
Right.
And share your experience and share your concerns about your district.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah, and yet people don't do it, right? And, I'm as guilty as the next person for not always doing that when I should. And so I think, again, we need to take responsibility for ourselves and our area and make sure that we are advocating to those folks, or people are advocating to me. And we're going to continue to make sure that we find the ways that people communicate best. So maybe that's text messaging. Maybe that's, yes, you've said it's easy to do these days. You can just email your senator or representative. That's true. But you can we find even easier ways to communicate with folks and make sure that we're getting out our message about what we think, what we've discovered are the priorities of the people of this district, and then we're putting out information. And when folks want to reach us, they know how to do that, and that there are easy ways for them to do that. And again, we're a changing society. Technology is changing all the time, and it's my job as a representative to keep up with that, because I think the reason that we're seeing fall off in terms of participation for a lot of reasons, but not the least of which is because of the way we communicate has changed. So we want to keep up with young people, we want to keep up with the people in our district, and we want to communicate with them at and on their level and in a way that makes sense for them.
Go ahead.
In many ways, it seems like every generation finds that loss of faith in the system, loss of faith in representatives and what they're about. And you're saying just step up and re-engage because it's worth it, and you have a voice, you can really and make impact.
And to add with what you're saying is the cliche of, you are a voice that needs to be heard. I don't remember exactly, but it's so important for every voice to speak up. And so really, if we're not, then we're just hurting ourselves. And I've struggled with that because of my lack of involvement and in the know about things. But, I appreciate you, and there's been a couple other people over the last couple of years that have, because of your approachabilities, that it's been easier for me. And
brings it down to earth a little bit.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to feel like I can sit down and, eat a sloppy burger with you and not worry about the juice running down my face, Whereas some people just aren't that approachable. So I don't mean to beat that horse to death, but I think it's great. And so, our voices do need to be heard. So if you haven't been speaking up, you need to speak up.
And we have a short phrase that we use, and that is, your voice matters, your vote matters, and you matter. And I think that's a great summation of what we're talking about here. It's that your voice and your vote and it all matters. And we want you to be a part. We want to invite you in and want to make sure that, that we're honest about how we're representing people here.
Going down a little bit different path real quick, I'm sure you always hear people say, you never know what's going on behind closed doors. A little bit of a concern, okay, you're saying all this now, and this all sounds wonderful, like you typically hear with candidates all over. Once you get in there, you're going to become one of them. You'll be one of those people instead of our person. So I can't imagine how difficult that might be to juggle or to balance, navigate through. But at the same time, I'll just put it out there, as I'm sure I'm not the only one with that concern, that, what's going to happen when you get in there? Are you still going to be able to be the Christina that we're seeing and getting to know now, and feeling that energy and that fight in you?
Sure. Well, I hope that I've been myself for a long time, so I hope that I don't lose any of that energy or that passion. I think of myself as a pretty tenacious person who fights for what's right, and I've done that again in all of my career, and starting when I was a young person here in Lancaster, making sure that I was helping folks in the community and fighting for their rights and their needs. So I hope I'll continue to do that, but and I will continue to do that. But just to say that we must acknowledge those realities that you speak of, and that while I will maintain myself, we must acknowledge that I'm one of 35 members, and that it will be a challenge. It will be a challenge to navigate a party system, as well as again, just that I will likely be in the minority of parties. So the Democrats are in the minority in the House right now. And so there will be a lot of challenges to navigate. But again, I think the point is that I've had a lot of experiences in my lifetime that have helped me to prepare for that environment. So I've worked in really difficult countries such as Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Sudan, and really worked hard with local activists on the ground to make sure that their own voices were heard, worked with, when I've had to, again, difficult governments to ensure the safety of my staff members and things like that. So I'm used to negotiating. I'm used to working in tough environments where the stakes are high. Oftentimes, it's life. It is a matter of life and death, and I don't say that lightly, and I don't say that to exaggerate, but that's often the situation in the places where I've worked. And I come to the table with those experiences, and I'll carry those to Capitol Hill to fight with the tenacity and the energy that's required of the job, and also to make sure that we get, results for this district. So,
if I can go down that path a little bit, working in some of these foreign countries and stuff, where the role of women might be really seen differently.
Right.
How was that? Was there a personal battles there?
Sure.
Did that add complication?
It occasionally added complication. I would say for the most part, it didn't add too much complication, only because I was a Westerner, and so when working in Islamic countries or more traditional societies, as a Westerner, you get a pass a little bit, so I'm sort of seen as Western and therefore not bound to the same rules as other people. I mean, I still suffered from, but I still had to deal with, just day-to-day sexism and things like that. Right. Or questions like, how many children do you have, and all these things that, just that women have to field every day. Right. But they're nothing that was too drastic, so.
So I'm hearing no concerns of you being the new kid on the block going into Congress. You could take Congress on. You've taken on so many other different parts of the world that just falls right into play and could almost be a little easier.
Maybe,
at the risk of,
maybe,
hopefully, right?
Maybe.
Yeah, hopefully that would be nice.
Maybe.
If I can just go back a little, you touched on earlier about being a part of the domestic violence world, and I'd like to know a little bit more. It's something that's near and dear to my heart, unfortunately, but fortunately, and it's certainly an issue. Sure. So what's your experience been, if I may, or if you can just share a few things?
Yeah, so I was had the privilege of working for the Joyful Heart Foundation, and again, their mission is to support the survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse, and 1 in 4 women in this country are a victim of domestic violence, and that's of reported cases. So that's actually quite a high number. And as I do my work now as a candidate, I find people disclose, women and occasionally men disclose to me all the time their experiences, thanks to the background, again, thanks to my work at Joyful Heart. And what that really allowed me was an understanding of those issues, and again, how rampant it is in our society, and the other issues that come come to light with those things. So when one is a victim of domestic violence, you are affecting children. You're stuck in a legal system that can oftentimes be very unhelpful to you.
Yes.
Those children may not be as good in school because they're distracted by the things that are going on at home. There's so many issues there. And so what I really learned, thanks to the survivors that I worked with, was what that's like on a day-to-day basis. And I played a very small role in supporting those folks, but they really taught me so much more than I ever gave them, and really helped me to understand those issues firsthand. And again, that's the kind of experience that I'll be bringing to Capitol Hill. So not just pie in the sky, sort of fluffy ivory tower, oh, that's a nice issue, great, 1 in 4 statistic, blah, 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 but really hard-hitting, understanding, meeting with survivors, understanding their issues, understanding the rape kit backlog, understanding so many things in a different way, in a personal way, in a truly, truly personal way.
Definitely walking in their shoes as much as one can. Not that you ever wish for anybody to experience it, to get it.
Right. And again, I think we all have domestic violence in our families. My grandmother in her first marriage, I never knew this man because it was before I was born, but she was a survivor of domestic violence and managed to get out of her marriage and then marry my grandfather. But that's something I didn't even know until she was on her deathbed. And so it's in all of our families and all of our lives, and we should definitely make sure that we understand those issues and that we're doing the right things, at a federal level to help women.
That's a conversation for another day.
Of course.
So this has been a lot of fun. It's been really interesting today to get to know you more.
Yes.
Is there something else you'd like to close this out with? Something where you'd like to let people know?
I guess I just reiterate a couple of points. Again, we're in a changing world and changing times, and that's going to require a lot of energy and new ideas. So I hope folks will consider me as the primary and the general election roll around. Of course, get engaged, but also you asked me to the side earlier before we started, do I have a favorite quote? And I think, one of my favorite quotes is "Be the change." I think we all need to walk the talk.
Yes.
And many of us are just talking the talk. And now is the time. 2016 is a great year to get involved. And we'd love to have you on board. So please join us.
Awesome. So get involved. And we can find Christina again at
ChristinaMHartman.com and on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
Great.
And getting involved means voicing your questions and concerns and voting.
Once again, we want to thank Christina for joining us today.
Yes,
I'm
thank you.
Eric, joined by Kat of Solutions by Kat. This has been For Your Info Podcast, a production of Solutions by Kat. Thanks so much for joining us.